So
It's recording right now, so I can just edit it when.
so that'll be fine. Okay,
I'll come see you about 2:30.
that'll be fine. Okay, hopefully a little before that.
Yes, sir.
I got 124 here, so yeah, good. Hello, everyone. It's Bruce Polk with another Adventures in Great Symphonic Music. We're going to take a great journey today. There are two chats in this, but they're separate works. They can be done separately. They're not connected except by overall theme. So, and the overall theme has to do with the criticism that has been a part of our world for a long time. In the musical field, it was a male gender dominated industry for the longest time. But there were always women composers. But most of the criticism that was unfairly applied seemed to indicate that women are not able to handle the longer, more complex, more deeper kinds of music. Yes, they can write a nice salon piece, just background music or little piano pieces or some songs. And yeah, that would be okay, but like writing a symphony, 30-minute, 40-minute symphony or an opera, well, we don't think they have the depth to actually make that happen. Oh, really? Well, we're going to do what we can to prove that wrong, both in this chat and in the companion to it. So today is a chat entitled Life's a Beach, because we're dealing with Mrs. Amy Marcy Cheney, that was her maiden name, Beach was her married name. So Amy Beach, so Life's a Beach. And we're going to explore that right now with this incredible Gaelic symphony of hers. She's an American, lived from 1867 to 1944, born in Henniker, New Hampshire, from a very distinguished New England family. She was a child prodigy. She made her debut in Boston at the age of 16, and shortly after that appeared as a soloist with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. But her mother believed that a woman's role was to be submissive to the husband. Therefore, even though there are tons of great musicians and great teachers in the area, she wasn't allowed to study with them. She just studied with a normal neighborhood piano teacher. Probably a very good piano teacher for people who wanted to be, amateur players or just play the piano a little bit, most of it, that's why I started, went to just a neighborhood piano teacher, and the experience was very, very positive, and that led to other great things for me. But she never got the formal training from the more advanced level of teaching that would have been available to her there. Now let's see, she married when she was 18 years old, in 1885, to Dr. Henry Harris Aubrey Beach. He was a Boston surgeon, 24 years older than she was, which means that he was probably right around 42 years old when he married this 18-year-old girl. Now, he was a widower. There is no evidence of an arranged wedding, but the age difference, well, it kind of sure sounds like it, the 42-year-old widower getting an 18-year-old girl to call his wife. Okay, well, yeah, you can make of that whatever you want. Now, he said to her, yes, you can still do one public recital every year, and if admission is charged, all proceeds will go to charity, because I am the husband. I'm the doctor. It's my job to support you. So no, you are not allowed to get income from any kind of a job. Well, okay. However, in his defense, he did encourage her to keep composing, and so she did. A few years after their marriage, her first major success was a Mass in the key of E-flat major, well received. And then, this is an odd statement. Pardon me for the oddness of the way it sounds. But she had two things that happened 1 year apart. In 1910, her husband, Dr. Beach, died. 1911, her mom died. Those were the two people that were preventing her from going into music in a more professional level. So I think the proper term is freedom, because now nobody could hold her back. She was on her own. So my goodness, she ended up, she toured Europe for 3 years, met a lot of composers while she was there. When she comes back to America, she stays, at least for some time, in the MacDowell colony. That was named for the recently deceased American composer Edward MacDowell. He had a large tract of land, forest land, and he had constructed several little private houses, little ones, and people that were painters, composers, poets, writers. They could go to the MacDowell colony and get away from the hustle and bustle of living in large cities and spend all their time working on some of their creative efforts while living in this beautiful forest environment. A few years prior to this, so I guess it would be about 10, maybe 20 years prior to this, there was a Bohemian composer by the name of Antonín Dvořák. We would know him as a Czech composer, but back then they were Bohemians. He taught in New York for 3 years, from 1892 to 1895. He was brought here by a very wealthy American gal who wanted to start an American conservatory of music in New York. And the purpose was, as she told Dvořák, I want you to lead this music faculty. You're going to be you're the big star. And all of our American composers, when they get serious, they go over to Germany. The leading musical centers were there, Leipzig, to a lesser extent Berlin, Vienna, places such as that. That's where people would go to study. And they would come back sounding like very competent and pretty good Germanic sounding composers. But she said, no, I want an American school. And Mr. Dvořák, what you did is you took, whilst working inside the German structural confines of music at that time, what you did was you began to imbue your works with the rhythms and the melodic types of the Bohemian and Slavic folk music that made your music the hit worldwide. Even the Germans loved it. So, and she said, that's what I want you to do. I want you to come to America and try to find a way to inspire our American composers to develop a voice that will be more defined with America and not so much defined with the German school. Well, Dvořák took this pretty seriously, and in his 3 years here, he exposed himself to many different types of American music. He heard several actual Native American troops that were singing and dancing, and he said, wow, no place in the world has exactly that sound. That's pretty unique. He also had, at the school he was teaching at, anyone could study. In fact, the woman who started it, she encouraged people of color, the former slaves, African Americans, women, people of any kind could be admitted to the conservatory. And so there's this great, breadth of material available. And there were several people. There was one in particular. I don't think he was a former slave, but I think his parents were. And he had a beautiful lyric tenor voice. And he knew the songs that his parents had taught him. And he sang these songs, the work songs, church songs, all the things that he remembered. And Dvořák heard these melodies and, whoa, there's nothing like that happening in Europe. So, also here's another thing. Dvořák was in Chicago for a big 3-month-long Chicago exposition. And he conducted one of his works, very successful. At this exhibition, I don't think it was when Dvořák was there. There's no record of him attending this concert that happened, that was performed by another person, a young African-American fellow playing the piano by the name of Scott Joplin, also appeared at that Chicago exposition. So ragtime was also beginning. Dvořák gets back to New York, and he writes in the newspapers and says, yes, you have the potential for an American school. And in my opinion, it's going to be based primarily on the music of the African Americans or Afro-Cubans or whatever you want to call them, but people of color. Many of them here served as slaves, many of them were also free, but they bring a new element to your culture that has the potential of making an American music. And he was absolutely right, wasn't he? Except that the new music that came out of that culture is what we soon called ragtime, swing, and jazz. So some symphonic stuff happened too, and it did. And Dvorak influenced people who were not of color. Charles Ives' Second Symphony is filled with patriotic tunes, church tunes, slave songs. It's an incredible symphony. So he influenced the people that would come, probably not directly from his students, but the generation after, who passed on Dvorak's teaching and showed people how they could make it work. So this is what is happening. However, he puts this in the newspaper, and Amy Cheney Beach writes a letter to the editor, and basically, she was saying that she disagreed with Dvorak's statement because of her lack of familiarity. She's a New Englander. She said, I have had no contact with Native Americans. I have had no contact with people of color, or minimal. Therefore, my influence is more from my parentage, which was Irish. And she said, therefore, the people of the North are far more likely to be influenced by Irish, Scotch, English, maybe German influences in their own personal family background. Well, okay. So by the choice of themes she uses in her symphony, she's following her own advice. And in the symphony we're going to hear today, she said, yeah, there's a program. It's not a program in telling a story second by second. No, it's not that. It's more the mood, she said, that it deals with the sufferings and struggles of the Irish people, their laments, their romance, and their dreams. Okay? So, her position was very, very defensible from the following perspective, that Irish songs had long been a part of American culture. Thomas Moore, his collection of Irish melodies, was published in the United States as well in 1808. Things like Believe Me If All Those Endearing Young Charms. That is a Thomas Moore Irish text and melody, along with The Minstrel Boy, The Last Rose of Summer, all of that. Stephen Foster, right? Camptown Races, I Dream of Jeannie with the Light Brown Hair, Old Dog Tray. Stephen Foster was of Irish descent. So yes, the Irish tradition was very much a part of American music. Now, Amy was part of the Second New England School, or the Boston Group. It was composers that would got together, and they would talk about music, play music for each other, and just keep themselves together with being encouraged. And she was the only woman. Amongst that group are several wonderful American composers, John Knowles Paine, Arthur Foote, George Chadwick, very important, Edward MacDowell, George Whiting, Horatio Parker. Amy's writings were mainly in that romantic idiom compared to Brahms or even Rachmaninoff, yet in some ways she predates the famous Rachmaninoff, and we'll talk about that later. She did have perfect pitch. She discovered that in an early age. It means that she could play a note on a piano, and she knew that was a D, right? So perfect pitch. And she also associated with key areas with colors. There have been several attempts by many composers just through practical usage, or maybe I should say historical usage, where often piece was very triumphant, tended to be in C major, Beethoven. That's the last movement of his Fifth Symphony, very triumphant in C major. Deep tragedy is D minor. F major, lyricism. These are stereotypes, and they are not every piece in F major is necessarily lyric, but it had that potential just from composers who had written many pieces that seemed even a pastoral style. F major seemed to be a good key. All right, anyway, Amy saw colors in those keys. So that expressed a lot of her choice of key areas. Like Hector Berlioz, the French school, 1820 to 1850 or 1860, fairly non-chromatic, which means, melodies are not just based upon things like that. And he avoids obvious chord progressions. Berlioz, that's in the main true. Obvious progressions, like you heard them. knew that last chord was coming. It had been just for practical usage. Berlioz does use it, but he liked to not use it too. Let's see. Well, Mrs. Beach had heart disease, led to her retirement in 1940 and her death in New York in 1944. All right, 1894, she begins work on her symphony, the Gaelic Symphony. Now, this would be while she's still married, okay? All right. She completes it in 1896. And there are 4 themes of the traditional Irish Gaelic melodies, hence the subtitle, The Gaelic Symphony, for this work. When the piece was premiered by the Boston Symphony, a week or two after the premiere, a review came out written by George Chadwick, a member of that group in Boston, the Boston composers, what were they called? The Second New England School. And I'm paraphrasing the review, but it went something like this. On the basis of the incredible symphony by Mrs. Amy Beach, as performed by the Boston Symphony recently, we must now finally acknowledge that Amy Beach is one of the boys. Well, thank you very much. But nevertheless, how great of him to acknowledge the fact that this is a great symphony, equal to anything that they, the guys, were doing, and saying that this is worthy, this is great stuff. Pretty cool that he would come forth to say that. He has an influence on the other composer we're going to talk about also when we get to that in the next chapter. All right, let's see. What else have we got? Still, it's amazing. I mean, so much of what she created, remember, she didn't have the big schooling, right? She was pretty much a self-taught composer by looking at scores on her own. So, impressive. All right, let's take a look at this Gaelic Symphony. The first movement, as you can see in your handouts, it's in standard sonata form. That's, the standard Germanic form. You have a main theme, and after the main theme, you have a transition. The purpose of a transition is to change keys. We're starting in E minor in this piece, and you're going to move away from that during the transition. Get away from E minor and get to your second theme, which should be contrasting mostly in key, and it is from E minor. It ends up in G major. So a change of key, that's what was expected of the sonata form. And that's called a subordinate theme or second theme. After that, you have an optional closing section. And in this closing section, Amy Beach uses an Irish jig called the Conor O'Reilly of Clownish. Okay, and you'll hear that. It's a definite jig melody, and you'll hear that very, very clearly in there. All right. So that, in a sonata form, that is called the exposition. The first theme, change keys in the transition. Second theme. Then comes the development section, free form, do whatever you want. Take your tunes, rip them apart, put them back together, clash them one against the other, change keys all over the place. It's what I call the composer tricks section, where they show what they can do in a creative way. So, exposition, where you expose your themes, development, have fun, recapitulation, where your first theme comes back, and so does your second theme, and the closing, and then you can tag on, as she does, an optional coda, which is an ending section. Beethoven lived in the developments and the codas because they were free form, no rules. And Beethoven was a no rules kind of a guy. Yeah, okay, he followed the basic structure, but where he made his greatest advancements were in the free form sections of the sonata form. All right, so this piece begins very murky, and you get, for the main theme, it's not much of a main theme. In fact, it's really fragmentary. We just get hints of it. Or that kind of thing. And it does get a little bit more fuller statement later on, where we will hear some of that, and particularly the 1B section, the consequent theme, what's this here? Okay, but still very clearly related to it, and she develops this a lot, even while it's being exposed in what is called sequences. A sequence in music means we play it starting and then it comes back, same idea on a different starting note. Same melody starting different pitches. Those are called sequences. Okay, then there's a transition, and there is a second theme, which is really not much of a theme. It's just kind of a leaping theme, and it also will be expanded, but it's just. That's the second theme. Again, okay. But it does provide contrast, different keys, so on and so forth. We could spend hours talking about the formal structure. Doesn't matter. Let's instead listen to it. Here is the first movement of Mrs. Amy Beach, her Gaelic symphony, the only symphony she wrote. And here it goes. Murky beginning. There's the INT introduction. Fragment telling the theme here. The horn. Those trumpets. Now in horn measure 18. Then it breaks away. Horn again. No, that's trumpets. Back to murky time. Fragmentary ideas. Trumpets again. Then theme 1B happens at measure 59 in the fiddles. Here. Sequence. 71. Theme 2. Changing keys. Should do. Horn. And now at 106, the murky sound into the second theme, clarinet. Here it is. But what's that? That's part of the main theme. Okay, clarinet said, no. We already did that. Theme 3 in the fiddles. And now 146 to close, and here's the jig in the oboe. It's 146. So that's the exposition for a main theme, a second theme, a closing theme, right to the development measure 166 here. That's on the bottom of page 3, just to your right. The right side of the page. There's 1A. Theme 6 is a rhythmic extension of it. There it is. On to page 4, please. There's measure 190. Theme 5 in the fiddles. We moved away from it. Now measure 214. Get the little key things here. 1B, clarinet. Theme 3, that's the second theme in the fiddles. So she's combining the themes right next to each other. Horns. The elongated version. Rising to a climax here. 270. Tonic cadence inverted fragments. We should be heading into the recap, but no. 318 an interlude. There have been fragments of that tune earlier, but that's the full statement. Now the recap is here. 327, horn. Not a literal restatement, it's an altered restatement. In the proper key. Trumpet. One B in the fiddles. 66. The transition, similar to what it was in the exposition. Theme 2 tossed in there as well. And 402, subordinate theme in the clarinet. But an E major, is it E flat? E major. E flat major. Now the closing section, 438, the jig and the flute. And the oboe. And we're home in E, almost. Top of the page, on the page on the right, which is page 5, There it is, 466. Dakota, free form. Building and building and building. Trumpets. Back in E minor. Well, that's a pretty exciting first movement, don't you think? Yep, I do too. I love that. What a most inventive stuff going on there. All right, right into the second movement here. So the second movement is going to, where am I here? Turn the page. That's where I need to be. There we go. The beginning is an alla Siciliana. The Siciliana is an Italian Baroque period back at the time of Johann Sebastian Bach, a dance that features bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-bum, bum, ba-bum, bum. It's a rather slow dance, as you can tell, and that rhythm, that long, cert long, long, cert long, long kind of a rhythm. And this is an Irish folk song that, do I have a translation of that? Let's see. Yeah, okay, here it means the little field of barley. And the text for that folk song, I dreamed my love of thee in the first sweet sleep of night, when the winds were breathing low and the stars were shining bright. She does a reverse Brahms here in a way, or maybe not reverse, maybe it's just like Brahms, where she has the Siciliano. It's still a dance movement, because in symphonies, in the old days of Beethoven or Mozart, you had the minuet. With Beethoven, you had the scherzo. They were dances. And so she begins with the Siciliana. And then all of a sudden, this very moderate bum, ba-dum, bum, it's kind of slow-moving tempo. You don't even suddenly recognize it. She melds right into a section that's going quite a bit faster than that. And then what you get, it's kind of hard to pick it out at first, but it is a set of variations on that tune played at a very fast tempo with scurrying strings. And that's what that theme 2 is all about. Yeah, well, again, you'll hear that. And essentially what happens in this movement is the alternation of those two ideas. The principal song, which is the slow Siciliana, and the secondary song, where it goes very fast. There are development sections, and then the principal song and the second song come back. So it's kind of an ABA form in a manner of speaking, which is a chorus verse, but quite a bit of development that happens in there in the middle. So there it is. Again, no sense spending too much time talking about the structure. This melody is one of those earworm melodies. It gets into my ear and I can't let it go for quite a while. It is just a gorgeous, gorgeous Irish folk song. Well, here it is. Hope you enjoy it. The second movement of the Amy Beach Gaelic Symphony. The horn sets the stage, quoting just a fragment of the theme. here's the main tune and the oboe. It's consonant phrase. To the original tune. Now the flute joins in. Measure 16 is here. One, two. Suddenly very fast. Here's the theme in the fiddles. And the main tune's in there. Goes back and plays it again. Variation on the main tune. Pretty cool. Now 54, development section. But there's the Siciliana tune thrown in there. Ha ha! Original rhythm, but it's still a variation, isn't it? It's not exact. Measure 70, part 2. The F is holding it down. Changing keys now. '92. Oh, there's the Dark as the Night melody from the first movement, isn't it? I think so. For a transition. Sounds like Mendelssohn. Midsummer Night's Dream, Scared So. Fragment of that tune again. Stops. Suddenly slow after the grand pause. Preparing at 164. There it is. violins join in also. And the flute. And that's 174. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. Sorry about that. 174 should be 186. Which is here. There it is. Second song. By the tempo anyway. But it's... Here's the coda. Isn't that delightful? What a delightful contrasting dance movement. Now we get to the true third movement, which is the true slow movement, I should say, which is the third movement. And there are two either Celtic or Celtic folk songs. I won't attempt to pronounce the Celtic, but the English translation, I'm on page 8 here. The Lively Child, or Cushlamachri, right? And that is kind of a song that she said is the a paean to the Ireland, to the natural beauty of Ireland. And the second folk song, Which Way Did She Go, is a funeral song on the death of a child. Okay. In this movement, you'll hear lots of solo strings, a lot of solo violin, solo cello, and sometimes just the principal players of the string section playing. Very beautiful, very, very dramatic. And the way she combines these two folk songs are just marvelous. So again, better to just listen to it, and I know you'll enjoy it. Here we go. It's a much more dramatic movement. This is, again, I'm hoping it will show you or convince you that this is a really solid, deep, dramatic symphony, and certainly this movement exemplifies that. I hope you feel the same way. Third movement, we're on page 8 of your handout. Here we go. Anticipate the main theme. This is all just introduction. Now the main theme in the cello. Nope, that's not right, sorry. The violin cadenza. That's what happens first. Everybody stops. Cadenzas normally associated with a concerto or a concertante work from the Baroque period, if you will. And now comes the cello in measure 20, the first of the folk songs, The Lively Child. Now in canon with the solo violin, cello, fiddle, Consequent phrase in the oboe 1B. Fiddles, solo strings. Now in measure 38, measure 40, fanfare introduction to the second song. Here. Second theme is in the brass here. Kind of fragmentary. So we don't hear that theme very well, but it's in there. And now in measure 52, variant of the main theme. And now measure 60, the second thong, clearly. That's the first song, but the second song is in the fiddles. '64. So once again, that primary song is really dominating things. Theme 1B and the fiddles there. Balanced return of 1A. The cellos. Here. Now the top of the page on the right, top of page 9, here's measure 85, violin solo with clarinets. Back to the cadenza idea for the solo violin. '93, and finally the funeral song. Second statement of the flutes. Two. Fanfares are back. At 129, the bass clarinet, the main melody. Mournful sound of the bass clarinet. At 133, the coda. I hope you found that as moving as I did. I think that is just absolutely stunning. And music of great depth, right? By a woman. Yeah, way to go. It's there, folks. Now the last movement is quite the opposite, a very triumphant movement with a really kick you in your ears second theme, just passionate. It's a Rachmaninoff kind of theme, but like I said, this is before the great Rachmaninoff that we know, before the Second Symphony, before the Second Piano Concerto. So, but this was the time of these great melodic melodies, fully scored. Richard Strauss was doing it all the time. So was Mahler. Very, very exciting. It is in a sonata form, with again quite a bit of symphonic development of the materials. Second theme is a subordinate one. At the very end of the symphony, there is a section. If you look on page 14, is it page 14? Yeah. There's a section at the bottom in the printed music, Ritmo di tre battute. It's that gorgeous second theme. And you see, the lines are going up and down. The vertical lines, those are called measure numbers. They divide, here's measure 1, here's measure 2, measure 3, measure 4. And what the composer suggests here, the tempo is going so fast that each one of these measures is a beat. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the orchestra parts are reading through it, the measures, very, very fast. In your ears, you won't be aware of that, but it's kind of a compositional technique. Beethoven used it also. But 1, 2, and 3, 1, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3, 1. Interesting technical rhythmic device there. Enough of that. An exciting, driving, glorious finale, I think. I hope you agree. Here it is, the fourth movement of the Mrs. Amy Beach Gaelic Symphony with this triumphant, fast, exciting opening. Here we go. Page 11. That's not together. Here's the tune. Measure 18. It's from The Dark is the Night song, under the words dark and loud. Now measure 62, the transition. Still basically the 1B theme. It's a developmental transition. Turn your page 12. Measure 106. Here it is. This theme. Fiddles. Brahmsy in here, sounds like Brahms, yes. And now development section 153. 193. 1A, augmentation, long notes, woodwinds. Developmental process is to augment the rhythm. Here it is again. The theme played much slower. Fiddles. Theme 2. Past 234, if I didn't catch that, sorry. No brass. Top of page 13. Recapitulation, main theme. There it is, 292. Again, not just literal repetition, but close enough to remember. And 332 is coming up. Here we go. And 340, the second theme. What a great tune. And now 381, the transition. Or the closing, really. And 397, the coda begins. Coda is the push to the finish, and she's taking it all the way down to rebuild again. Here we go. Please turn to page 14. Here's 422. Again, she backs off a little bit, only to rebuild with dramatic structure. Building, here we go, into 479. Measure of music. Ultimo, if you will. That's exhilarating. So, once again, in the male dominated times where they felt that a woman was incapable of working in the longer symphonic forms, as her reviewer and co-member of that composition group, she is one of the boys, and indeed she is. This is a great symphony. The fact that it is written by a woman has no bearing or difference in defining this and what I consider to be one of the great American symphonies. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So, life's a beach, and that's what she gives us. Hope you enjoyed this trip to the beach with Amy Beach. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.